Yo, ma, what's up, everybody? We're back. I'm back in Oregon for the year, and we're back on this channel with another video. Not a chord video, sorry, but that series will still be coming. I also want to do a video that's just a base, how to play jazz on cello, a general approach. I also am almost done with a research paper about using equal divisions of the string in order to approximate equal temperament, so you don't have to think, oh, the notes just get scrunched up together, as much as you can think, this same distance here is this distance here. Anyway, all that is to say, there's a lot of videos coming. These just take me a little bit longer. But today I want to delve into giant steps. For one, because I learned it on the main channel, I didn't want to just leave it right away. I also thought, I should learn this down an octave, which is generally true of a lot of things in jazz. Like the octave is a little less specific than it is in other music, so learn things in various octaves because you never know where they're going to be placed. Unless you play piano, pretty much every instrument, it's like slightly different to play in a different octave, right? So I thought, well, this is actually surprisingly kind of a decent pedagogical piece. Now you might think that that's surprising considering, Vox has like a 10 million view plus video that calls this the most feared song in jazz. And obviously it's really fast. It's really complicated, but here's the thing. It's complicated because he is switching key centers very rapidly, and because he's playing notes extremely rapidly. He's playing close to 300 beats per minute. It's just insanely fast, and it's rapidly changing through key signatures. A good metaphor for this I saw online is like he's switching between 3 different languages. Now, I think they're related languages still. I don't think it's as crazy as switching from like Mandarin to Zimbabwean, but I think that it's kind of like he's switching between French, Italian, and German or something. Some languages from a similar region, but disparate enough that the 3 key centers, which are G, E flat, and B. G's generally considered pretty easy to play on our instruments, at least. E flat, I think, is pretty easy to play, although there are a couple more accidentals in the key signature. B major, people generally think is pretty hard to play. I think maybe on piano it's a little easier because the more black keys there are, easier it makes piano. I've heard. I barely play keyboard. My mom does, so I grew up with a piano, and I'll use the MIDI keyboard to input notes, but sound off in the comments if you think that I'm wrong, that pianists generally don't think B major is that crazy. But string players definitely do. So here's the thing, though. Because it's going by so fast, because he's switching between these different key centers, the only way that the song works is because everything else is really straightforward and simple. Now, what giant steps is straightforward and simple? Well, yeah, here. Look at the very first thing that we have here in the transcription. We have a C sharp minor 7 chord. C sharp minor 7. Okay, so what is that? C sharp minor 7. Well, a C sharp minor 7 is a chord that has a minor third and a minor 7th and a 5th. So there's 4 total notes, 1, 3, 5, 7. The 3 and the 7 are minor. So what does that look like in practice? Well, let's start with an open string so that you can get a sense for what this is. If we have a G minor 7 chord, then we have G, B flat, D, and F. It's that sort of sound. Very cool sort of sound. It's not like how a dominant 7th chord wants to resolve, right? It's not how a major 7th kind of feels something existential, ethereal. That's why that gymnopédie uses the major 7th chords, because it evokes that feeling. Minor 7 is kind of like just the cool chord, like, right? You have, it just kind of exists in this kind of stationary but cool plane, in my opinion. So that's minor 7. Well, okay, so what notes do we have here? The first note is C sharp. all right? And then we have the minor third, E, fifth, and the minor seventh. What? So he's literally just outlining the arpeggio of this C sharp minor seventh chord and resolving to the major third of that F sharp 7 chord. Okay, well, what about the next chord, B major 7? Okay, that's a major 7th chord. So B major 7 would be B, D sharp, F sharp, A sharp. And what do we have? We have the triad without the 7th going down. What? So, okay, and then let's look at the next one here. He's playing, for over D7, he's playing. Now, if you open a jazz pattern practice book, this pattern, which will be called 1, 2, 3, 5, because those are the scale notes that are involved there, is like one of the most basic things that jazz musicians are kind of taught to practice. You're taught to practice it both in terms of literally transposing up. A little bit trivial on cello since you can just keep that all in one position and keep moving it up. But you're also taught to play it as a scale pattern. So if we just stay in the key of D, but we go up one note at a time. Yeah, that was the 7th chord. That was a slight mistake there, but you get the idea. 1, 3, 5, and it can either be just the normal major, or it can be whichever of those harmonies exists on those scale notes. All right, don't worry if that was a little bit too complicated. Just know 1, 2, 3, 5, very, very basic. Okay, there's one more on this page. Most of them are like this. They're either the arpeggio or they're just this 1, 2, 3, 5 thing. What I want to show you here, this F minor 7 chord, is something really fantastic. That is a down the scale blues scale. What's the blues scale? Well, if you look up the blues scale, you'll see that it's basically a major scale, but it also has a minor 7th. In fact, what I just played there is another very standard jazz exercise where you play the blues scale up and then you outline the dominant 7th chord for it, and then you go around the circle of fifths like that. We'll go over that, but here's the thing. Is it that fun to practice those scales back to back? Arguably no. Unless you're the right type of personality that really locks into stuff, the right type of ADHD or the right type of super type A, scales are hard to practice. But something that's fun, something that's challenging, something where the difficulty is obvious, right? Sometimes you get simpler music, but you don't know how, you know that you're not playing it musically, but sometimes then it's hard to know what to do, right? How do you get the musicality out of something simpler that it's not working? But with something hard, it's almost a little bit more straightforward. You know that this is fast, you know that there's chromaticisms, you know, you're going to be slowed down by that regardless, so you're going to be really getting inside the nitty-gritty of essentially how to play musically. So this is what I have found for myself. I always found it a little bit easier to work on, you know, a big project that was technically challenging, but musically more straightforward, than to work on simpler melodies that were more musically challenging, more technically straightforward. Suddenly it makes sense why I'm the player I am, possibly, once I say that, right? But I don't think this is just me. I think this is a lot of people. And I think Giant Steps is cool, and I think Giant Steps is engaging. When we bring it down the octave as I have, we don't have to use any thumb position. But what we are doing is we're practicing what are basic jazz ideas, and in 3 different key signatures, covering a quarter of all possible key signatures in 12-tet temperament. So for those reasons, I think this is an absolutely fantastic piece, at least to view as an etude. So the one thing that I will say is, do not worry about playing this up to tempo. Do not even worry about playing it at the tempo that I demonstrated in the full video on the main channel or at the beginning of this video, because I still want to look cool. I still played it at like 240 BPM. Don't worry about that at all. What I want you to do with this, and what we're going to do with this, is we are going to break down, basically chord by chord, what is happening in the notes, okay? And then the other thing that I have done that is hopefully very useful is I have spent a lot of time, I actually recorded myself and then transcribed what I did, because I wasn't even necessarily super consciously thinking about what bowings I was using, because at this point that's become so intuitive. But I wanted to be able to put some good bowings in, some good fingerings in, and I have to say right up top that I probably do at least, I tried to do what I've written here, what's the companion document in my recording, but the thing is, if you change one bowing, then you kind of have to change another. So what I want you to do with this, and also in similar moments, I've sometimes done different fingerings here. So what I want you to view this document as is an example of what some really good jazz fingerings and bowings are. And you don't have to do them, but what I do ask of you is that you try to make sense of all of them. So you don't have to do these bowings and fingerings, but I want you to be able to do that, understand what is easier or available or more musical about these fingerings, many of which are not going to be your standard classical fingerings. The reason why is because I want you to start developing your own intuition about when certain bowings, when certain fingerings are going to be useful. Okay? So without any more ado, and also I should say, I'm sorry that I'm sniffling. I'm still getting over a cold. But we're going to record this video because I have put a lot of work into the fingerings and the bowings for this, and I really want to make another lesson video, and I want to be, really building the available repertoire of educational ideas that you can use. I got a beautiful comment from somebody recently that said, they really were inspired. They really want to be able to do the jazz cello. I kind of got the sense that they were maybe a bit depressed, and I certainly relate to that. So that's my motivation. Let's get into it. Roll the intro, and then we're going to go over this.
Hi, kids. Do you like violence? Do you want to see me stick both my bows through this one-of-a-kind hit?
Okay, so this document is free. Go download it. I have a link below. It takes you to my website. You can also find some other sheet music there. Not all of it's free, but there are a couple other freebies. So, keep in mind there. All right, so let's go over at least the first page of this, because I want to show you at least all the different things, all the different little things. But if we're flowing, we can go through more of it. And if there's demand afterwards, we don't go through all of it, and we can always do a follow-up lesson. But I think I'm going to show you guys the basic gist by going into detail for the first bit, and then you're welcome to continue to work on it on your own. This is one of those things that's going to sit with you for a couple of years. You'll come back to it. Once you can actually play through at any tempo the whole thing, that's going to be a major, major accomplishment. So don't even rush into that. Just view this as kind of like a reference book, something that you can find some wisdom in, like the Bible. No, I'm kidding. I'm not. You're canceled! Whatever. I'm going to leave that joke in. All right. So once again, first we have this minor 7. Oh. Okay, so let's just play this in isolation. And then when you find one of these little moments and you're trying to get better at it, don't just play it in the key that it is. Try to move it around a little bit. That way you'll kind of get like a little hang for it. Now let's break down. It's all in one position. Plus we're doing this little shift, half-step shift, to get to that A sharp. And let's talk about the bowings real quick. So what these slurs are doing, and this is, again, a very basic thing that you'll find if you study, how you're supposed to practice jazz. It is a little hokey if you exclusively do it, but tying from the and eighth notes, so like 1 and 2 and 3, tying from the and eighth notes to the beat eighth notes, right? So this is going to help facilitate the feeling of swing. I don't want us to be thinking, I I don't want us to be thinking that I've simply misnotated this and it should be in 12/8, right? That's kind of a typical way to think about swing, is to just tripletize it. Da, 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 da. If we were to truly do that, we would get something that certainly approximates the swing feel. But the thing about the swing feel is that it's kind of like how people's vocal accents work, how this particular cadence of people's speech works, which is to say there's kind of infinite nuance to it. So we don't want to what am I trying to say? Over identify a procedure, over proceduralize how we're doing swing. But one of the things that really does help is a feeling of slurring from those ands into, so that creates a bit of a separation for one, because one thing that is generally true in swing is that the first note's longer than the other note. But even that, if you listen to Dexter Gordon, he swings eighth notes that are straight, but he plays a little bit behind so that the whole thing has a feel to it. So that's why we don't want to think about triplets exclusively as being, oh, there's a little bug on the screen. That's why we don't want to think about triplets exclusively as being the swing feel, right? So what would it sound like otherwise? That would be a little bit more of a classical way. But just by slurring, it already has a little bit more of that swing feel, the accentuation of the offbeat, a little bit of implied syncopation, even though we're just playing eighth notes. All right. And then the way that I've set this up, the B major chord is just in position here. So when we shift back a half step, but then modulate your fingers to be in an extended position, and then your first finger will be on that F sharp. And we can go to the next one. Just don't worry, just do open string. And one of the reasons that I shift up to the 4 there is to avoid the open A string, but another is so that this G major first inversion arpeggio is in position here. All right. Now, it's a little bit hard to see the mordant symbol, but there's a little mordant symbol here under the B flat 7 chord. It just means to do that. Note, a half step up from that note. And if you listen very closely to the recording, he almost lands on a B natural and then kind of scoots down to the B flat. Totally fine, totally acceptable. You don't even really notice. One of the beautiful things about improv is when you're really in the moment, when you're really flowing with it, or really any piece that you know super, super well, you can kind of like get away with being out of tune and it still sounds good. It's very, very bizarre, but I think it comes from, if there's enough connective tissue, then it still sounds reasonable. It still sounds plausibly musical. So I wrote this little symbol here that just means it's a quarter tone sharper of a normal flat, right? Something like that. Excuse me. And then what are we playing here over the B flat 7 chord? Well, we're kind of low. We're kind of low in the register, but if we moved this up an octave, we're just playing the top of that B flat 7 scale. The scale that goes for a B flat 7, which is to say a B flat dominant 7, is a major third on a minor 7. So it's all right. So here we have that. And it resolves to the E flat 7, where we play an E flat major 7 scale. Look at this. Okay, so let's discuss the slurs here. So you might notice here already, I've broken the pattern a little bit, right? If I were strictly speaking, keeping to the pattern, it would probably be. And you start to hear, that starts to sound a little bit hokey. That starts to sound a little bit like, oh, I'm just doing the slur thing. So what I like to do instead is to mix it up with a little bit of sass, a little bit of accent on some of the notes instead. Because of this trill and because we're going into the open string, we can just group these 3 notes together. We don't have to worry about changing the bow. Add a little bit of accent by not having the slur there. And then, I guess looking forward, one of the things that I do naturally, it seems, is to often do 2 and then 1. 2 slurs and then 1 not slur. Just to add that little bit of variation. If we were to move which notes have the slur, so this is what I was saying, it starts to affect everything down the line. If I were to slur into that E flat major 7, then I probably wouldn't want the slurs in the same place in the bar anymore. So there, I intuitively, after the 2 slurs, broke it up in the beginning of, or in the middle of the bar, and then slurred where previously wasn't slurred before. Okay, so this is why, you know, try to make sense of the slurs as they are, because there are cascading effects if you change things, and I think you really want to get the meaning of what these slurs are telling us. So anyway, so for the A minor 7, we do have an A flat. That's not in the normal chord, but we do otherwise have the A minor 7 chord in third inversion, because an A minor 7 has G on top, but we have the G at the bottom here. That is a third inversion A minor 7 chord, but we're doing a little bit of a chromaticism. We're centering around that G. And for that reason, for the chromaticism reason especially, I like to be able to have that open string almost overlapping with it. It's just kind of a cool sound, and it sets us up for that. Now that figure is another very, very common figure in jazz, especially in that downward position like that. It's part of what's called the altered dominant scale, or the diminished whole tone scale. But this is a scale that works particularly well over dominant 7th chords. And what is this scale? Well, you start off by alternating half steps and whole steps, and you finish by doing whole steps. So let me show you very slowly. So in D, we would have... Right, so we have half, whole, and then for the rest it's whole. And especially these last 4 notes. That's just, oh my God, all over jazz, everywhere. And when you hear it, you're going to be hearing the final note as the third of the chord that you're landing on. So let's see what we have here. Oh, you know, I actually have a little typo in here. You guys will see the correct thing though. Okay, so we have D7, because excluding the E flat, we have 3 notes that are from the D7 chord. What's the D7 chord? It's D, F sharp, A, C natural. And then all we have is this additional chromaticism that allows that figure, which already wants to resolve down to the B, which is the third of the next chord, G major. And we have that nice altered dominant sound. Oh, it's so cool. It's so cool. So for this first line, you know, we're not changing position very much. We start here just below 4th position, shifting back to 2nd position, 1st position, 2nd, 1st. Now we shift to 3rd position, and then down to 2nd. So we are staying kind of local. We're staying kind of local. And what you might notice too is I don't like having to change whether I'm extending my hand position or doing like a normal chromatic hand position where possible. I'd like to do a bunch of stuff like this, then switch to this, then switch back to this, because that's just one of those things that really changes the timing when you're going faster. All right, so then on the second line, first thing we have is that first inversion major. It's actually the opposite of the previous G major 7 that we had. And now we have, and the next note is the octave of that B. And so now what we have is a minor 7 with a flat 5. That occurs over this B flat 7. So because of the dominant 7th, because of the minor 7th in this B flat 7, that's why that note is flat. So even though we're starting on the 3rd of B flat 7, we're going to still observe that A flat that's in the B flat 7th chord. Where does the C come from? Well, the C, being one note above B flat, is a 9th. So that's, you can always extend a 7th chord up to include additives of 2. So, any 7th chord can have a 9 implied to it, or an 11, which would be kind of like a sus4 chord, because that's an octave above a 4 is 11, or 13, which is when you have a 6, but it's not really implying an inversion. We'll get there. All right. 13s are less common, but 9s are really common. So that's what we have here. And here we have our first optional fingering. So I have written in what I think would be the more normal approach, where you're gonna shift between the 4 and the 3. You're kind of cloaking the shift with a string crossing, and everything is in the same position. However, once you get some of these patterns under your fingers, you might view that as breaking up the pattern, because we had this perfectly fine first inversion B flat 9 chord, but that ends with 1 if you do it all in position. So I actually also like to just do a 1-to-1 here. You do hear a little bit of that like swoop or whatever, but there's a strange cleanness to it as well that I have a hard time explaining. But just know that is totally fine. And I should mention, oh goodness, that I have tried to adhere to a strict pattern with these fingerings, where the only time the fingerings are marked, one or two reasons. One is because that marks where the shift is. And the other reason is I mark where same finger shifts occur, and I'm going to mark both of those back to back. That way there's no confusion that, yes, I really do mean for you to play 4th finger for 3 notes in a row if that happens. And so even if it might seem a little bit sparse at first, you wish I had filled in more fingers, what it communicates is where the shifts are implied as well. So just spend a little bit of time trying to figure out, well, if it is all in one position, then how am I going to make this work? Okay, so let's finish out this line. There's that 1, 2, 3, 5 again, but for E flat major. Now, once we get to the 1, we're going to go from the extended position down so that we can get this tritone and get the E natural. Shift up a major 3rd. And then we just have to extend the 1 back to get in that extended position. So a little bit of coordination involved here. You can kind of think of it as the first one, we're bringing the upper 3 fingers back. Once we shift up, we're bringing just the first finger back. And again, just work on that. Just take that, use that as your warm-up, just trying to get that comfortable, but keep coming back to this and you'll be able to figure it out. Okay, so let's keep going a little bit. If we have this F minor 7, well, what I said is the downward B flat blues scale. Okay, so here I have a couple of fun little same finger shimmies, because you could just play it in 2 positions by playing the chromatic 4, 3, 2, 1 here. But I think that it adds a little bit of character to have some same finger slides. It adds to the sense of swing, again, without changing the timing of it per se. We do have these slurs from the and to the and to the end, but it adds a little bit of shuffle. It's almost too clean. And we'll do that later, because like I said, I do different fingerings in different places so you can get that. But here, and it's gonna be a little bit weird at first, but just like slow it down and like try to get the feel for that, because once you start to, it's very fun. Okay, so then here, the 2 4s marked. The first one says that we have to shift up a half step. The second one says we're shifting back. Okay, so now we have this this A minor shape, second inversion, because we have E at the bottom, which is the 3rd note of that chord. I'm really sorry, but you know, there really is no way to play jazz without music theory. And you know, if you are going to music school or you're gonna go to music school, it's actually kind of laughable. Like in the theory and oral skills classes, everything they're doing in there is like basic stuff for jazz musicians who have a huge advantage. So there does need to be some way of intuitively absorbing the music theory, because that's how you actually understand how to play different things over the chords in the first place. So don't be too scared or overwhelmed by it, but if it doesn't make sense in the moment, just come back to it later. It's totally, just don't overwhelm yourself. But yes, second inversion, because the first inversion would be on the 3rd, and the second inversion is on the 5th. And the 3rd inversion only exists if it's a 7th chord, because it would be on that 7th. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So here we actually have our first, I think, true non-diatonic note, at least on a beat, because we have this G over the D7th chord. Now, of course, he's doing something called surrounding. He is surrounding the note that he truly means to land on, which is F sharp. And this is also a very, very common, you'll hear surrounding the note that you're going to land on. Very, very cool. That's the reason why G over D works there, even though usually a 4 sounds kind of weird, because it sounds like, because, you know, circle of fifths is the same as a circle of fourths in the other direction. So a 4th can kind of feel like your 1 chord is trying to resolve to that 4. That's why it's a little unstable. That's why a sus chord feels a little bit unstable. Here's what a sus chord sounds like, by the way. So if you have a D chord, but then you do a 4 instead of that 3, it's got a certain feel. This is very common in like church music, but it does feel, it's suspended. That's why it's called a suspension chord. It does feel like it wants to fall back down from its suspension back to the 3rd. Okay, and the same here. It falls down to the 3rd here. And then we have this, we have the same thing as earlier. Also didn't mark the fingering change there. Okay. So we'll come back to first position, and we're going to shift on 3. Oh, okay, so what are we doing there? Well, what is this scale? It starts with D sharp, and it ends with an A sharp, and we're over a C sharp minor 7. Well, I'll tell you what this scale is part of. It's part of a B major scale. If we have, those notes are in the B major scale. Why is it over the C sharp minor 7 chord? Well, because a minor 7th chord that's a 2 and a dominant chord that's a 5, they basically are the same scale, but with a different starting note as the root. They're different, what are called modes of the scale. That's why they work so well together, the 2-5-1 progression, because it is just one scale, but 3 chords. So that's why it's totally appropriate to play this B major scale here. And then it continues here where we have the F sharp 7. We play the first few notes of that, resolving to B major. And here we do 1, 2, 3, 5. And we actually play the 7th for once. Very cool. So let's, so you just have to shift back a little bit, shift a little bit to play this, shift for these. So here is one of my, one of my style of fingerings here, where we're almost making it all one position by just being willing to shift a half step. Oop, see that? So that's the sort of thing that you want to study from this and absorb. Why did I write it that way? The reason I wrote it that way is because all of these notes then are just with the extended hand position, and you just have to shift a little bit and play all the notes. I said 13s were rare. We have one right here over the B flat 7th chord. We have a G. Well, we know that that's a 6th because it's over one string, which is a 5th, and it's up to half steps. So that is a 6th. And we're moving chromatically down to play what would be a B flat arpeggio, except for the fact that it resolves to the E flat that comes after it. Yeah, if we're doing the bowing that I wrote. And then we have this little figure here where you can either reach, which I like to do, or you can shift up and use either 4-2 or 3-1 to play. But you'll hear, I kind of had to like try to place that high note. It might be a little bit bold with the other fingering, but it kind of fits musically. Right? So that's why I wrote that. That's why I wrote the fingerings. So that's what I mean too about trying to actually figure out what the fingerings mean instead of just saying, oh my God, 1 to 4 to 1. The reason I wrote all 3 fingerings is because I do view that as a change of position, just note at a time. So don't think that I'm expecting you to stretch your hand that far. Just know that that's the fingering. And then here, do be aware of C flat. C flat's kind of a weird one we don't encounter very often, but it's the same as a B, natural. The reason why we use it here is because if I didn't, you would have flat, natural, flat, all back to back, and that's almost harder to decipher compared to actually having the different notes be on a different line or spacing. And then that's that figure. So at this point, we have made it through one chorus out of 12. Well, I think even 14, but I didn't transcribe the final 2 choruses that he does, or is it 4? Before he goes into the melody at the end, because I just wanted, the main block of the solo. And I do feel like I have explained most of the concepts that exist in here. Again, it's kind of straightforward. It's very repetitive. The same types of things occur. And for that reason, I think that it's worthy of a lot of self-study time at home. So hopefully what this video has done, is giving you the tools enough to download this and actually get something out of working with it. Even if you don't learn the whole thing, even if you don't finish it, even if you have to take things massively out of context and go half bar by half bar, you're going to learn a lot, I think. And especially if you're like me, and you kind of like the technical challenges, you find that they're easier to work on. If you're like the person who commented and you're a little depressed and wish you could go, full ham into how to play jazz cello better with more freedom and stuff, this will give you a lot to work on that I think you'll get a lot out of. And this will be a little bit more fun than just working on simple tunes while getting, strangely, the same benefit of working on simple tunes because, again, it's simple, but it rapidly changes key centers and the final performance speed is insanely fast, to the point that these bowings actually stop working at that speed, by the way. So these bowings are for playing it like 80% tempo, having a really nice time feel with those 2-note slurs primarily, and once you start playing it even faster, like if you watch the octave up video that I did, I'm grouping way more notes under a single bow because it's just the only way to really do it. But that's a little bit more advanced, I suppose. So yeah, don't overstress yourself trying to learn this, but do have fun learning this. And if there's concepts that I've talked about in this video that you want a deeper exploration of, I want to do the deeper exploration too. I plan to, but also leave your comments and questions, because that kind of does help me focus like what the needs of this audience are. And hopefully, if you have no intention of ever playing giant steps on any instrument, still kind of a fun video just to watch, you know, the breakdown, so to speak, of how to make these notes, which are otherwise not very idiomatic, or at least they would not ordinarily be considered idiomatic for our instrument, to actually be pretty straightforward. You don't have to do anything super crazy. You're economically changing whether you're in an extended position or not. You're economically shifting. I think the biggest shift is a major third shift. It's really not anything that is totally unmanageable, and nothing that goes higher than a half step above fourth position through the entire solo. So if you're still feeling weird about thumb position, don't even have to worry about that. Okay, now I'm kind of rambling, but it does give me an opportunity to put the end cards on screen. Thank you for all your support in the first video. Hopefully there will still be some interest in this video. And yeah, I'm taking very seriously the goal of really codifying a lot of the things that I work on, continue to work on, but have worked on with jazz cello, which I love, regardless of if it's the most commercially viable. And I think a lot of people do love jazz, but they end up becoming jazz musicians. And so yeah, I do take very seriously going forward, trying to codify what I have done, try to make more available for other string players to do what I'm interested in. That only helps me, by the way. You know, if there were even more jazz cellists, it would be easier to get gigs as a jazz cellist. You know what I mean? So selfishly even, I hope that these videos help the world that I want to be a part of. But yeah, just know that I value it, trying to take it seriously, trying to be a little bit academic about it if possible. And yeah, we're just having fun. I love it. Love jazz. Love having you here. And we'll see you in the next video. All right, take care now. Bye.